Going on with our conference, we have a totally unique guest now, the unique speaker. We have personally having the honorable president of the Club of Rome, Ernst Ulrich von Weizsaecker. Please greet him. This is the most influential critic of neoliberalism, the leading world expert on resource efficiency and sustainable development. He's not only the author of the report for the Club of Rome, Come On, which caused to the real intellectual revolution, but also the author of lots of world bestsellers like Factor 4, The Limits of Privatization, Factor 5, and other outstanding works, lots of which have become the reports for the Club of Rome. Mr. von Weizsaecker is the former member of Bundestag, the Parliament of Germany, and he used to be the head of the Parliamentary Commission on the Economic Globalization issues and Parliamentary Committee on the Environment. He also has been the director of the Center of the UN on Science and Technologies for the Development, and also the co-head of the International Panel on Sustainable Use of Resources. Ernst Ulrich von Weizsaecker is considered to be one of the top 100 of the world thinkers of contemporary times, like Paul Krugman, Joseph Stiglitz, Daniel Kahneman, the inventor of the Internet, Tim Berners-Lee, Albert Gore, and others. So we are now having the totally fantastic panel and an opportunity to communicate with an esteemed Mr. Weizsaecker, and the moderator of our public discussion will be the best economic journalist of Ukraine and a totally unique professional, Alla Dubrovik-Rochova. The Day newspaper, the International Institute of Management, so I think that you know her. Dear colleagues, I gladly give the floor to Alla, and dear Mr. Professor, you have the floor for your speech as well, please. Thank you, Victor. After such a fantastic introduction, it would be as well to have the fantastic presentation from Mr. Weizsaecker. So please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I had prepared a preparation of 45 minutes, but decided it is much better have a more talk. So I tried to reduce it to 10 minutes by rushing through the picture. Oh, wait a moment. So the story of the Club of Rome I'm leaving essentially out. But on economics, I'd like to pay attention to the second big report of the Club of Rome, published in 1991. It was called The First Global Revolution. And it was written at the end of the Cold War. It was seen as a chance of a worldwide peaceful revolution paid from the peace dividends of disarmament. Unfortunately, nothing of it happened because the new neoliberal mindset got the upper hand worldwide with liberalization, privatization, deregulation, shrinking the state, and the peace dividend went all into tax cuts for the rich. This was the beginning of globalization. This is sort of the prelude. But then I leave out, and now we have now prepared a new book called Come On, translated into Ukrainian. Thank you very much. And essentially it says, growth economics was perfectly okay for the empty world, but can be wrong for the full world. And the book has three parts. First is, come on, don't tell me the current trends are sustainable. And the second says, come on, don't stick to outdated philosophies. And part 3 says, come on, join us on an exciting journey towards a sustainable world. The title, Come On, has 2 very different language meanings in the English language. So let me rush through. Yeah. Then the second part about the philosophical crisis begins with what Pope Francis said in his encyclical Laudato Si, namely, that the current economy, with brutal competition, selfishness, short-term thinking, is destroying the earth, our common home. And then we went further in the book, looking at the manner how some of the heroes of economics are quoted. And we discover they are quoted wrongly. Adam Smith, David Ricardo, free trade, and Charles Darwin. He was not exactly an economist, but I'll come to that in a moment. For Adam Smith, it was necessary and clear that the geographical reach of the market was identical with the geographical reach of the law. And then markets are fine. But today, financial markets are global and the law is national. So the doctrine of financial markets is governing the world. Misunderstanding of Adam Smith. And David Ricardo said, okay, it's wonderful if countries trade with each other, but capital should not move across borders. It's the merchants and the goods that cross the borders. But today, capital is by far the most mobile production factor, dominating the real economy, forcing everything into highest returns on investment. So it's the governance of the investors. And the people, what can they do? Obey with the demands of the investors? Well, sometimes they do, but it's usually crazy. And then Charles Darwin, he had discovered that the species are in permanent competition against each other. But this was a local phenomenon. He was on the Galapagos Islands, where he discovered birds, all of them finches, which had evolved into lots of specifications in the absence of competitors from South America. So, for instance, on the right-hand side of those birds, you see one having a cactus thorn in his beak. And Darwin immediately understood that had there been woodpeckers on Galapagos, the finches would never have learned that, because the woodpeckers have a long beak anyway. So, the absence of competitors as the precondition for evolution. So it's a different understanding between Darwin and modern economists. So let me then rush further. And then we say we need a new enlightenment. That's a heavy word. And that new enlightenment requires a lot more balance, less doctrine. balance between the heart and the brain. Here's the picture. Balance between humans and nature, between short-term and long-term, between public and private. That's what I said about Adam Smith. If the public sector is strong enough to control the markets, markets are wonderful. Or between religion and state. Nobody wants an Islamic state or a Christian state, a state of 1500 with witch hunts and things. But if the state is anti-religion, anti-ethics, only utilitarian, it's destroying the civilization. Or between speed and stability. Everybody wants also stability. And today's economists always want that the speediest is winning. And sometimes she or he is wrong. And is speed in the wrong direction. So, or between feminine and masculine, of course. And not by women like Maggie Thatcher copying all the evils of the men. That's not good. So rather appreciate them both. Or equity, which is good, and rewards for achievement. Both is good. But they are mutually not exactly contradicting. And then we discover, of course, that in Asia, balance is the natural thing. And in the West, we have too much doctrine. So we in the West should better learn something from Asia. Well, and then in part 3 of the book, we go into energy decentralization, circular economy, the blue economy, according to Gunther Pauli, engaging civil society, and controlling, re-regulating the financial sector. Unless we do that, we have lost. Okay, I think here I stop, and this is even less than 10 minutes, and now you get question. Thank you.
Дякую. Справді дуже хвилює.
Well, really, it's so exciting to be the moderator of such a discussion. And for half an hour, for me, it's incredibly not enough to open the potential and the professionalism of such a speaker as Mr. Weizsaecker. So I will allow myself to quote you, Mr. Ernst, in the book where you write, in the Come On book, that in the old world, the economics was not that complicated. Just to fish more, you just had to construct more boats, to give more fishermen to the sea, and then you will have more fish. But today, to get more fish, this is the paradox. You have to create areas where fishing is banned, is prohibited. So again, quoting your work, Come On, you are saying that today the world is overcoming a tendency that the more and more people, billions of people, don't trust their governments. They're speaking about the crisis of the representational democracy. For lots of years, the humanity was going along the globalization process. We were creating global market, global informational network, but we are still staying not on the global, but in the local governments. And we can see how the system today is in the clinch. When the economic global and environmental global policy, which the humanity needs today, is not considered by any politician. The local governments, vice versa, are closing and having the wars with each other, which we can see on the countries with bigger economies. Which way out do you see? Maybe the world government could emerge, and if yes, when?
If I had good answers to these questions, I would be a hero. I'm not. But it's good questions. global scope and globalization of understanding, of science, of mutual help is a wonderful thing. So I'm all in favor of a global scope. But if 99% of the global scope means returns on investment for the investors, it's crazy. So we have to rebalance so that civilization, beauty, heritage, helping the poor, this doesn't create returns on investment, but it creates civilization. So we need to re-regulate the financial markets. I saw you nodding. And we have to understand that humanity wants more than just returns on investment. So we need to create incentives for the good things and less for the bad things. You know, presently, the incentive system is exclusively making money. Okay? But helping the weak, like on Galapagos Islands, the finches, is not profitable. Helping between women and men is not profitable. Helping theater, culture, music, etc., is only sometimes profitable if there are the stars. But ordinary family culture is not profitable. So we have to have a better understanding where we have to go. And we have a new member of the Club of Rome in the book, Robert Costanza. He, in a sense, is the best economist of alternative rewards, alternative goals for economy, instead of just growth. You know, a hamster wheel is also growth, or a traffic accident is also growth. It means jobs for the police, for the car makers, for the hospitals, etc. But is it good for the people? A car accident? No. You know? So our today's measurement by the state, what we want, is always growth, 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 and this means turnover, 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 which is circular. It does not create something new, mostly. So we need a better new understanding of economics. That is more or less the conviction in the Club of Rome. And we see with pleasure that young economists and students of economics worldwide begin to ask for variance, for a wide scope for economics, not just the narrow doctrine of neoliberalism.
І, власне, ваша позиція.
Well, so what's your position? The global world government. So what's your position? What about the world government as a phenomenon, as an institution? Is it needed for the planet? Or such organizations like the UN can totally cope with the global challenges of the humanity?
Of course, with the effects of what people do becoming global, it is necessary that we establish global rules, not necessarily a global government. I believe many people don't like that. They like their own culture and think being told by a central government is not what they want. But in our book, we have the idea of a friend of the Club of Rome saying, let us convene that each country creates a new ministry for, you could say, cooperation. He calls it cohabitation, with the exclusive mandate of inventing and developing topics of action which make the own country better and as many other countries as well, so that empirical evidence is rising that we are, as Ukrainians, better off if in cooperation with the Germans or the Romanians or the Russians or the Filipinos, for that matter, we cooperate in a way making both parts richer. So this, in a sense, is also the idea of the old-fashioned globalization, but measured against what the National Minister of Cohabitation declares as good for their own country. Globalization does not ask whether it's good for Ukraine. They ask, is it good for the investors? And that is a difference. So we need global thinking, global cooperation, and people in charge of inventing and developing cooperations that help both.
Ви автором ще однієї фантастичної, як на мене, концепції.
You are the author of one more fantastic concept, and I think everybody has to pay attention to that. The notion of ecological burden, which can be found in the prime cost structure of each types of good. So to produce a kilo of meat, we need to have an ecological burden or percentage of work for the earth, for the planet. And the same concerns 1 meter of textile. So how do you estimate the success of the humanity, of the promotion of your concept? And what's your role in that, whether you promote it in the global scale? Thank you.
My own role is minimal, but it was in 1990, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, that I said communism collapsed because it would not let prices tell the economic truth. Prices did not reflect the work behind, the value behind, etc. They were all essentially state-dominated. And this has eventually led to an economic collapse. But then I said, capitalism is going to collapse if it would not allow prices telling the ecological truth. If prices are wrong, if, for instance, meat is too cheap to reflect all the negative aspects in the chain of production are neglected, then eating meat is bad for future generations. I mean, it can be tasty for now, but in the long term can be wrong. And if prices tell the ecological truth, we as family economists would see to it that we eat less meat. Not necessarily vegetarian, that's fine also, but it would simply mean less. And meat is only one factor. There are 20 others, like climate impact of a stupid kind of motorization. I mean, even here in Kyiv, you have traffic jams all the time, let alone in Bangkok or in Beijing or in many other countries. This is stupid. In Singapore, they have introduced a rule 20 years ago that you cannot buy a car unless you have first bought a permit to buy the car. And the permits are limited to the number that is good for Singapore. And therefore, it was a necessity to expand public transport and make the city quarters so that cars are not always needed. So, with such additional rulings, you can make more good and less bad. So, I believe we can learn from pricing regimes, from allowances regimes, what is better for all or for most, and the future generations would be extremely grateful if we were finally doing this.
Насправді, я буквально 3 роки назад була в Сінгапурі і можу підтвердити.
Really, I've been 3 years ago in Singapore, so I can approve the words of Professor. We don't only need to acquire this permit. You have a very precise restriction on price, because it's incredibly expensive to buy a car, to maintain it, and to have this permit. It is really clearly regulated. Professor, your forecast for the next 10 to 20 years, what's expecting for the planet of Earth? Because maybe for the last 3 months I've heard from many people of different caliber that we are living in a very turbulent times. And even one professor told me, I have the feeling that we are now on the edge of the Third World War. I don't know how it would look like. Maybe it would be only in the trade wars, or maybe it will be a military conflict and aggression, but still the aggression, you can see that the aggression is increased. What's your forecast for 10 to 20 years? What's awaiting for us?
I'm not a prophet, I don't know. But I can observe that people are becoming more and more concerned and even angry about the financial globalization. And then there are 2 very different answers. One answer is falling back into the economy of nations, nationalism. And the other is a global scope, but rules to force the financial sector to allow diversity, cultural, geographical diversity, to allow regenerative economies, not destructive. That's another very important chapter. Regenerative economies, reconstructing the values of nature, etc. So, a global scope with rules for or against the financial market, and if we do that, we do the right thing. If we go nationalist, we do the wrong thing.
Які країни, на вашу думку, вже сьогодні найближча?
Which countries, in your opinion, are the closest to the implementation of the sustainable development concept? The concept which you are propagating or preaching in your Factor 5 book. And who would you consider to be the champion of decoupling?
In Come On, we selected 2 countries very far apart, which in one sense do the right things. One is Bhutan, a small country in the Himalaya, which decided with the help of the king, that human well-being is superior to economic turnover. And they try to do that. And the other country is China, oddly. China's 13th five-year plan is the most determined national plan of decarbonization, of restoring good water, restoring good air, helping biodiversity, which is impressive. The trouble is that in part the Chinese are exporting the problem. So for instance, they are supporting coal power plants in neighboring countries, and then they buy the electricity. This is not good enough. So, for all my admiration for the Chinese administration, something is not correct. And so, all in all, I would say the European countries have one huge advantage over all other countries of the world. They have learned since the Second World War that in first place you have to make peace, not wars. I mean, for 2,000 years, the Europeans have been fighting against each other. Terrible. And the creation of the European Union, originally the European Economic Community, was built on the principle of peace and of the beneficiary role of transferring sovereignty rights to the higher organization. So Germany has sacrificed 50% or more of its sovereignty rights to Brussels, and was the main beneficiary of it. So the idea of the neo-nationalists that keeping everything for oneself, including Donald Trump, I mean, this is simply stupid.
Так, з одної сторони я з вами згодна про те, що європейський
Well, yes, on the one hand, I do agree that the European countries
головне досягти миру, але тим не менше ми сьогодні
want to achieve peace, but we are still speaking in Ukraine and about Ukraine, and we are at war now. And unfortunately, the European Commission did not become, well, it is our ally, but still Ukraine was expecting for more support from the Europeans in this counteraction. And one of the dramatic projects for us, which is unfortunately found support in Germany, is the creation of Nord Stream 2. And unfortunately, this project for Ukraine so far looks a very dramatic one, a tragic one. And you, as the former member of Bundestag and the nephew of the former president of Germany, so this is the logical question out of that for you. Is there a chance of the Ukrainians to convince the Germans not to create the project of the Nord Stream 2 and not to refuse this closeness with Russia?
I fear my answer will not satisfy you. First, of course, it's ignorance. I don't really know. I happen to know the former German Chancellor Gerhard Schröder, who is strongly in favor. And I knew him from the time when he was 25 years old. And that was long before the Berlin Wall was collapsing. And his belief was that it is absolutely necessary for Germany and other countries to have peace with Russia, with the Soviet Union at the time, that at the time included Ukraine. So his motive for Nord Stream 2 is not meant against Ukraine. It's meant for economic cooperation, East and West. But personally, I'm a lot more critical, like you, of what Schröder is doing and what others in Germany are doing. And at least we should introduce some kind of conditionality that we are willing to cooperate with Russia under the condition that the other former Soviet Union countries are not negatively affected. And I would see some scope for fulfilling that kind of condition. But it's not exactly my turf, so I repeat, I'm ignorant about what precisely to do.
Дуже дякую.
Thank you so much. I can see that we are really short of time, so one more question left at least. So today we heard a very nice phrase from Harry Jacobs that we should remember that it's not compulsory for those who start the last that they are achieving finish the last. So Ukraine, we do hope it will be included in the global game, and we are not the first to do that. We can see that in the 21st century, the economical growth of the country was achieved with the increase of production. In your Factor 5 book, you are writing that the increase of production meant automatic increase of resources. And today, in Common Book and in the global agenda, you are saying that we need to learn how to increase production, the effect, the quality of life level, without using more resources. Maybe you could give us a piece of advice, 10 key positions which we should focus upon in Ukraine to have this quantum leap, to achieve the League of Successful Countries.
I believe there is not one country that you could copy. All make mistakes, including Germany. But you can do things which are good for Ukraine and for your future. And as you are now for the second time referring to Factor 4, Factor 5, let me briefly explain. Typically, to my students, I give the following question. Imagine Mount Everest, 8,800 meters high. Imagine a substance, a bucket of water, or such a table or so, weighing exactly 10 kilograms. How many kilowatt hours would you need to lift those 10 kilograms up to the top of Mount Everest? And then from my students when I was in America, I got answers between 1,000 and 10,000 kilowatt hours. In Germany, I get slower numbers between 100 and 1,000. Both is totally wrong. Totally wrong. The physicist's answer is 1/4 of a kilowatt hour. Can you imagine that? It's astonishing. A kilowatt hour is an unbelievable powerhouse. And what do we do with it? We waste it no end and brabble about a huge need for more energy. That's stupid. It's wrong. We have too much energy, not too little. But in order to make it useful, profitable, enjoying, to take more value, 5 times more value or so, or 20 times more value out of a kilowatt hour, we need to make the kilowatt hour more expensive, not cheaper. That is, of course, not very popular. However, it is correct. And then I'm saying, let us start a ping pong, like we have done over 150 years as a ping pong between labor productivity and wages. When labor productivity goes up, the working class can successfully fight for higher wages. But if wages are higher, there is a need for engineers to increase labor productivity. And this has gone on and on and on and on for 150 years, leading to a 20-fold increase of labor productivity. In many sectors, 100-fold. This dynamic should now be copied with energy. Saying, I said so in the China Council, advising the Chinese government, saying, you guys in China, why don't you increase the price for kilowatt hours by so many percentages as in the previous year the efficiency has increased. So what you pay monthly for energy services remains more or less stable. So the unpopularity of energy price increases could vanish. It could become popular because people get richer by extracting more wealth from a kilowatt hour. Eventually 20 times as much. So we would become richer by more expensive kilowatt hours. That, however, is something that should be internationally coordinated to an extent. Otherwise, the energy demanding industries will simply leave the country. So some coordination is possible. Again, we have a chapter on that in the book. And in Factor 5, it has been expanded a lot more. And I find that simply a rational way for humanity to handle the questions of climate, the questions of resource scarcity, the question of unhealthy growth, and replace it by benign growth, etc. So a new civilization, a stable civilization, will need higher energy and water prices and mineral prices. But it would take an hour or two to discuss it so that everybody in the room will say, oh yes, we can do that.
Дякую.
So I think everybody heard. So when you're coming home, you should say that the growth of the pricing for the communal services is just the creation of the new civilization. We are going along the global challenges of the humanity. Mr. Weizsaecker, thank you so much for this discussion. Now we have the autograph session. So if I may use this opportunity, I would ask you, I would be the first to ask the autograph for you.
But before doing that, let me say, the Club of Rome, historically and actually, is extremely grateful to Ukraine. With Bohdan Havrilishin, we had one of the masters of the Club of Rome. We have Viktor Vovk, we have now Viktor Halasyuk. And this is very important for the Club of Rome to have strong people from all cultures. So this is wonderful. Thank you very much, Victor. Okay.